Right. Now on the APEC VIP hotline, cutting edge training for the serious athlete, apecgo.com. Joining us for a weekly visit from the Big Mac blog, Fort Worth Star-Telegram, DFWOT. It's Mac Engel. How you doing, Mac?
Very good, sir. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing well, thank you. I am still trying to wrap my head around just exactly what it is I saw yesterday when the Cowboys beat the Steelers. It almost looked like a real live quality football team.
Tell you what, I keep saying this, and I had been saying this for a while. The one thing Jason Garrett had going for him is that he never lost that team. They never quit on him, and they kept trying. And I think that has a tremendous amount of value, especially in the NFL, where the teams are so close. As long as you are trying, you're eventually going to break through and get some wins. And there's no doubt, you watch teams all over the league, and you can see when their spirit is broken. And to that team's credit, they've never played like their spirit was broken. So, for whatever obviously it's worth something. They're 8-6, and they still got a chance to win the NFC East. Maybe the NFC East is garbage, but they're in this position largely because you have to give him credit for that. Now, they may not always play very smart, but the one thing that they do is they don't stop coming, and that has value.
Oh, it was incredible. I loved your line in the blog this morning where you were talking about the secondary now comprised of that guy, Spare, him, and who. I felt like I was reading a Dr. Seuss book for a moment.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, if you look back at their opening day starting lineup defensively and who they have in there now, It's stunning that and even some of the guys were saying it after the game. Michael Coe, one of his teammates, heard the name on the headset, and he said, "Who is that?"
Yeah, really.
And it's not a joke. They don't know who these guys are. They're getting them so fast, and they don't have time to really get to know each other. So that's the part of it that's the most impressive thing to me, is that there's no familiarity at all on that defense, and they're still doing this. And say whatever you want, I don't think the team is going to be a real threat if they get to January. But I do think it does say a lot of positive things about this team and this coach, the fact that they are where they are.
Well, they do keep battling. I mean, it's incredible. The first thing I've got to say is I cannot believe what I saw in terms of the quality of offensive line play yesterday against a team that is noted for its defense. And that Dallas offensive line looked like something, a bunch of imposters, because that's not the offensive line we've been watching all year.
No, not at all. And it speaks to one more thing. It's that if you give an offensive line or a team enough time together, law of averages say they're probably going to get better. And, they are pros. They're getting paid to play, and so it's not like they're terrible. They've just been overmatched, and you've put enough time together. And I really believe in Tyron Smith. I believe in that guy's ability, and I also believe in his intellect. I think he's a smart guy. If you give him enough time, he was going to be good. The one that I always had a question mark, and I still do, is Doug Free. And the other guys have just been inconsistent. When you're inconsistent, that means you have good games. It also means you got bad games, but every now and then you've got good games. So now they were okay 2 weeks ago against Cincinnati against a really, really good front four. They were just okay. Yesterday they were really good. And if they can do it again, if you can do that, then you got a shot. And if they can, that's the problem when you're just inconsistent. It means you're going to be bad, and you don't know if they're going to be bad next week against New Orleans. And the problem is, no one will be surprised if they would be, if they went out and had a bad game against the Saints, but they're not right now, and they deserve credit for playing a good game against Pittsburgh.
And then they go the whole ball game without getting any kind of a pass rush. I know you probably saw the TV replay where on Roethlisberger's touchdown pass, they put the stopwatch on it, and he had 8.9 seconds to get rid of the football. And then they get back-to-back sacks in the closing minutes of the game from Sean Lissamore, of all people, and Anthony Spencer, who's having a terrific year.
Yeah, and Anthony Spencer's having a contract year.
Yes, he is.
This was the kind of year they were expecting out of him last year. And the one thing I know about Anthony Spencer, having profiled him when he was a rookie out of Purdue and seen how his career has gone, this is very typical of his career as a football player since he was a kid. He's so good and he's so talented, and it it's one of those things, Bryan, where the more research I did on him, when I went back to Fort Wayne and I talked to his high school coach and his Purdue coaches, he's one of these guys that when he realizes the carrot is in front of him, he's great. And once he realizes that carrot isn't there anymore, it's just not as dominant. And you saw it when he was in middle school, high school, college, and now in the pros. And you see, and it's not like it's just that kind of behavior is just endemic to Anthony Spencer. It happens with pros all the time. And in this particular case, you know, it's money, which I don't blame him. Sitting at an $8-10 million check standing in front of your face, yeah, you're going to be really good. But I think it's also one of those things where he's in the prime of his career. He is good. And now he's playing the way his talent says he should. He's having a great year, and he's been every bit the equal of DeMarcus Ware. He's been great.
And then Brandon Carr earned his $50 million on one play yesterday.
Yeah, and I think that's the good thing about what Brandon Carr is that the Cowboys were kind of good. I mean, he had bad games. He did earlier in the season. He had some good ones. He had some bad ones. The thing that he did is that he's been better than Terrence Newman. The Cowboys cut Terrence Newman because they wanted to find a guy who was going to be better than Terrence Newman, and they did. The one thing Terrence Newman consistently did in his time with the Cowboys, he dropped interceptions. And we saw it last week in Cincinnati. He dropped what would have been a game-clinching interception late in the game, Newman did. Carr got the one pick, returned it a long way against the Bengals, set up a big score, and then obviously yesterday he made what was an incredible catch. That was a serious stab, and then basically gave them the win. He has been. They overpaid him. You have to overpay free agents, but he's been good, and he's been good all year. And not only that, he's a pretty stand-up guy. I think he's been a good influence in that locker room as a professional.
I know this is not going to get anybody off of his back, but Tony Romo's playing some great football right now.
Yeah, I said it a couple weeks ago. The one thing you've seen is that his numbers are starting to come around, and they were starting to look like his other seasons. And the fact is, you can hate him all you want, but the guy's pretty good.
He is.
He's not Peyton Manning, and he's not Tom Brady, but he's pretty good. And the way that team is set up, if he's good, they've got a shot, and when he's bad, they don't. It was always the question of could he eliminate the killer mistake, and he got away with some bad throws against the Bengals, but they didn't kill him, so they won. Yesterday he may have been as good as he's ever been against a pretty good team.
He was outstanding, and we have to say that the general manager is just a genius, isn't he?
Yeah, pretty much. And I'm telling you, that's the thing. And I know you read that in that thing I wrote after the game.
Yep.
That is the dangerous part of this. The Cowboys'
scary.
success is that now, absolutely, now Jerry Jones is going to sit there with a big, fat, told you so grin that he himself has earned. And he will tell all of us, me, you, all the fans, see, I knew what I was doing. But you know what? I mean, they're 8-6. They still have 2 more games left, and it is so totally possible that they will blow this opportunity.
Oh, sure.
I mean, going into Washington, first of all, they've got to beat the Saints. The Saints haven't quit, but that's one of those teams where I don't think Drew Brees is going to let them quit, but I do think that's a team that's, since the season's gone, if you can get them down, you're going to beat them. But can they do it? I mean, the Cowboys are really riding an emotional high that is not easy to sustain. And if they can sustain it, then I do think they can get, obviously they're going to get to Washington with a chance, right? I mean, regardless of what happens next week, they're going to go into Washington with a chance.
Sure.
So, the way the thing's gone, it's not bad. But as fun as it has been to watch this team this December, and as out of character as it is to watch this team have success in the month of December, where they haven't had a winning month in December since 2001, it's all on the table to see them go and lay eggs the next 2 games. I don't think they will, given the way they won that game yesterday against a pretty good Steelers team. But at the same time, given what they've done to us in the past, I think you have to be on your guard.
You can't get your hopes up. You really can't, because you just don't know from one week to the next what this bunch is going to do. I mean, that yesterday, nobody saw that kind of game coming out of this team yesterday.
No, but I think after the kind of win that they had in Cincinnati, you knew it was possible. I think what made it so, because, like I said at the very top, the one thing that the Cowboys have not done under Garrett at any point they have never tanked it. They've never quit. They've never mailed it in. In fact, when I'm thinking back about their games since he took over, now they've had some games where they've played badly, where they've looked awful, but they never stopped playing. Even against the Redskins on Thanksgiving, they never stopped playing.
Which was the worst game they played probably all year.
Yeah, probably.
You know, I mean, as far as to get down as far as they got.
Absolutely. But they never stopped playing, and that's as long as you keep doing that and giving yourself a chance, you know, to keep the game, you know, to give yourself a chance like the Patriots did last night against San Francisco, then you've got something that you can work with. The problem, I think, with the Cowboys is that you look at their roster, their depth charts, and just be like, you know what, that's great. You're trying really hard. Your players, you worry, are going to eventually be exposed. When you're leaning on so many guys, new guys off the street, there was a reason why they were there. Mm-hmm. And all the heart and intensity and care, well, that's great. But if the other guy across from you is better and he has that same kind of mentality, then, you know, that's just tough. I think the way this thing's going right now, I do think they're going to beat New Orleans, and I have no clue right now as what's going to happen in Washington. Oh. But you know what? As you know, and you've watched this team longer than I have, it's a hell of a lot of fun to watch.
Oh, it's great. And to think about them going into the final game against the Redskins with all of it on the line. I mean, it's like flashing back to the Staubach days, you know?
Yeah, it really does.
We love it.
And I think it's both. I think it's great for the league. I think it's great for both franchises. The one thing that bothers me about it, and even though I'm a partial media observer and all that crap, I really don't want to see Dan Snyder win anything.
I'm with you. Given the choice between Dan Snyder and Jerry Jones, it's a tough
Jerry
pick.
Every day of the week.
At
least Jerry's got a
sense
of humor, and he's entertaining.
Yeah.
Dan Snyder comes across as nothing but a giant, Napoleonic, money-grabbing fool, and I don't want to see his team win.
I'm right there with you. Okay, where do you want to go with this? You want to talk about Josh Hamilton, or you want to talk about Chuck E. Cheese?
I do want to talk about Josh Hamilton really quick, and because you mentioned it. The Chuck E. Cheese thing is funny, but the Josh Hamilton thing, I wanted to ask you about. You're a man of faith. You have tremendous, Christian convictions,
wow.
which I respect.
Thank you.
And everybody knows that Josh Hamilton wears his religion on his sleeve.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering when, as a Christian and as a devout believer, when Josh has said, "I prayed about this decision." I'm speaking of signing with when he signed with the Angels, and they had the press conference on Saturday. He talked about, "I prayed about it. I prayed about it. I prayed about it." Not to criticize him or not to belittle or diminish his belief,
right.
But as a Christian and a man who can empathize with that similar faith, did it sound convincing or did it sound contrived?
Wow. Oh, man. I hate to even try to think about what only he knows what's in his heart. I mean, I know that sounds kind of contrived also to say that. I don't know. I do know that people of faith are human beings too, and they've all got flaws, and good Lord, Josh has got more than his share of them. I think that sometimes, I'll say this, I think sometimes, the way God speaks to you is through, other people, and he may have been, by the way that John Daniels did not court Josh Hamilton, that may have been God's way of saying, you need to move to Anaheim. I mean, I know that sounds kind of crazy. I don't think it's biblical, but hey,
the one that I remember when Reggie White, God rest his soul, when Reggie White was a free agent, the NFL's first big-time free agent, and he went around and he was recruited by all these teams, Cleveland and Green Bay and Philadelphia and all these different places, and he said, God told me to go to Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
God told me to go to Green Bay. And
for all that
maybe
money.
It was a coincidence. The Green Bay Packers were offering him the most money, much in the same way the Anaheim Angels were offering Josh Hamilton the most money. Maybe God really did tell them. I don't know. I don't know what's in their heart. But I know this. At this point, I don't see any shame. If you're going to a pretty good team the way the Angels are, if Josh Hamilton just came out and admitted what he had said all season and all previous off season, which is, I'm going to remain loyal to the union, I'm going to the highest bitter,
Mm-hmm.
period.
Mm-hmm.
I had no problem with that.
Yeah.
You don't need to sell me about your faith. Dude, I know you love God and Jesus is in your heart,
Right.
and I respect that, but it's also okay if you say, you know what, I got one shot to make this kind of money. I'm taking it, and let's go play ball. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, and you know, God didn't tell him go to Houston. You know,
Yeah, isn't that weird how that always works?
Yeah.
God never said, you know what, go to the Brewers.
Yeah, go someplace where they lost 100 games last year. Now we're seeing what you're really made of. You know,
Right. Yeah. God said, go play for the Kansas City Royals.
then you'd believe, then you'd know. Now it's just like it's just like Tebow up in New York right now. This is the story of Job now. I mean, he sent him off someplace to say, okay, we're going to find out what kind of faith you really have now.
Yeah.
We're sending you to hell this year, you know?
Right. That's exactly. Then you would know. Every atheist and agnostic soul out there would say, you know what, I was wrong. There is a God. Josh Hamilton could have signed for 5 years and $150. Instead, he went to Kansas City to sign for 3 years and $25.68.
See, what you've basically learned about people of faith, at least in my case, is we're just as cynical as anybody else. I mean, sorry.
I'll say, but faith questions aside about Josh.
Yes.
You know, you're as a Rangers fan, are you sorry that he's gone?
I mean, when you think about what life was like by the end of the season and how the fans had turned on him, how it looked like, I mean, again, I can't speak to what was going on, you know, in his head and in his heart, but it sure looked like he quit on this team a couple of times. I can't say that I'm sorry that he's gone. I'm kind of glad the drama's gone. I mean, it's going to make it a lot more dull around Arlington. This coming summer.
True.
You know, I mean, but you know, the thing I am worried about is the fact that the Rangers have done nothing so far to replace that. You know, I mean, That's what's the concerning thing is if you're a baseball fan right now. I mean, you know, I have my doubts whether Josh Hamilton's going to play 140 games next year for Anaheim.
Yeah, you've got two big contract players who are over 30 that are going to need to DH some.
Yeah.
And Pujols and Hamilton, but
and what are they going to do when his eyelids stick to his eyeballs? You know what I mean?
It's he's your own, and basically, although I know Josh, you know, played that year with the Reds, Josh was basically the Rangers.
Oh yeah,
I always thought he was, in terms of since he left the Devil Rays. So to me, they were used to it. The one thing I've seen with big time free agents when they go to new clubs is they don't know you, and they don't want to deal with it. They're like, here's all this money. Just go put up those numbers that we signed you for. So they just don't want to deal with it because they don't know you yet. And with Josh, there is a tremendous curve there that you do have to deal with. He does bring with him a lot of baggage, and I'm not sure how that's going to jive right away. It could, if he puts up big numbers right away, everything will jive. If he turns out to be the kind of signing that Vlad Guerrero was a number of years ago for the Angels when he came over from the Expos, who cares? They'll let him do whatever he wants.
Now, let me ask you something, being the big city media guy. What kind of treatment do you think he's going to get from the very beginning by the Los Angeles media?
Los Angeles media, I have noticed for the most part, is rather tame for the most part, with the exception of Bill Plaschke of the LA Times and TJ Simers of the LA Times can both be pretty aggressive with their commentary. But you know, Anaheim is not Los Angeles, and the one thing I've noticed in my travels to California for sports is that their passion for sports is not quite the same way it is in other parts of the country. It is just, and I think it's consistent with the overall attitude of Californians, which is it just tends to be it's slightly more laid back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the following of the Angels just isn't the same as the Dodgers because the Dodgers are more ingrained with that culture, and they did a lot more for a longer period of time. And the Dodgers are not screwing around. You know, the Dodgers are in a serious market battle with the Angels. So, you know, I think if there is a place in Southern California where you can go make a lot of money and hide, relatively speaking, Josh found the right place. I do believe that. But at the end of it, he's still making a ton of money. It's Major League Baseball, and if this doesn't work out, he's going to hear about it. And if there's one thing I noticed with Josh, I think Josh is one of these guys. He's a really nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a simple guy. He's a nice man. He's a decent guy. But I do get the impression sometimes he is overwhelmed by his talent and the type of responsibility and expectation and production that his talent has generated. And whether or not he's in Anaheim or Kansas City or Texas, that's going to follow him everywhere until his career is over.
Okay, and lastly, we must spend a couple of seconds on Chuck E. Cheese.
Yes, I did go to Chuck E. Cheese yesterday. My daughter had a friend had a birthday party, and I had never been to one.
It's kind of like, now you know what it's like being in the ring during an MMA fight.
Yeah, I kind of felt a little bit like Manny Pacquiao did against Manuel Marquez. It's fun. My kid loved it. She had a ball. It was neat playing games with her. But I am telling you what, Brian, it is like the lowest common denominator everywhere you turn. It's not the kids that are having a great time. It's the adults pushing the kids around so they can play the games and win the junk that's been made for 36 cents an hour by some poor guy in the Southeast Asia that's producing all this junk that we must take home and win.
See, mostly what Chuck E. Cheese does is motivate you to pray that your child ages 5 years in the next 3 months so that you don't have to go back to the place.
Oh, and, she left the party saying, she wants to have for her birthday, she wants to have a princess party, and then she wants to have a Chuck E. Cheese party. And I'm sure you know what that's like. You'll do anything.
Oh, sure.
You're like, oh, yeah, sure. And then you get some perspective from it. You're like, wait a minute. Let's just get a pizza and a cake and call it a party.
Exactly. Look, I'll put the outfit on. Don't make me go there. That's the main thing.
Right, that's exactly right. Here's $200. Go do whatever you want.
Oh, you're already practicing for when you get her married off, see?
Well, yeah, that's right. And instead now it won't be cash. It'll just be a bunch of Chuck E. Cheese tokens.
I love it. That's a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? Hey, we won't have shows the next 2 Mondays. I just want to tell you Merry Christmas, and thanks very much for coming on with us all the time.
Anytime, Brian. It was great talking to you. Have a great week. Merry Christmas. Have a great holiday.
Same to you, buddy. Y'all take care.
Okay.
All right. Mac Engel from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, DFWOT, the Big Mac blog on Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM.